Hey guys, I know I haven't posted on this account in a little minute, despite all the craziness that's going on, all the turmoil, the natural disasters, the pain, and things like that this year. I just wanted to tell you guys.
I definitely know who moved that Tesla on that late July before they went on tour.
Details after a body was found inside a car at a Hollywood tow lot today.
Singer David's world tour potentially in jeopardy after decomposing human remains were found dumped inside a Tesla reportedly registered to the multi-platinum singer.
They say the body had been placed inside a bag. The grim discovery was made after nearby residents complained about a foul odor.
Police in Los Angeles tell ET the call came in Monday. According to reports, the car had been there for a few days and was impounded after it was abandoned last week in the Hollywood Hills. At the time, David was playing shows in the Midwest. No immediate ID on the victim, but a death investigation is underway. ET has reached out to David's legal team for comment. In the meantime, he's still set to take the stage Tuesday in Minneapolis, with the European leg of his tour kicking off in less than a month.
How did you make your first song?
I looked up how to make music on iPhone, and I used my sister's closet at the studio.
David, who started as a Fortnite gamer on YouTube, signed a record deal.
You're aware this is crazy.
Insane.
Recently, a source with a lot of inside information gave us a version of events that changes everything we thought we knew about this case. It sounds surprising, but it actually explains a lot of the strange details, especially that mysterious Tesla. Still, can we really call this the official conclusion when new, disturbing findings are starting to surface? From what we heard, we can clearly question why didn't the police collect all the evidence? What exactly happened inside that house that made someone cover the cameras? Who put Celeste inside the Tesla? And above all, is David truly the killer, or is there something much darker we're not seeing yet? The newfound evidence. Among all the evidence discussed, the one that raises the most questions is the house's own security system, a fully wired camera system inside the Hollywood Hills mansion. It's strange that police searched the property weeks ago, yet to this day, not a single frame of what those cameras captured has ever been revealed, from inside the very home where Celeste and David were said to live out their secret lives. The Hollywood Hills mansion at the center of the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case, a sprawling property valued between $40 million and $4.7 million, was equipped with a highly sophisticated security system that went far beyond basic home protection. This setup included multiple surveillance cameras positioned to monitor entrances, exits, and key areas around the home, along with an array of sensors designed to detect motion, door and window openings, and other potential intrusions. At the heart of the system was a digital video recorder, or DVR, that not only captured video footage, but also logged detailed activity data, such as timestamps for when doors were accessed or windows were manipulated, and even alerts for anomalies like low battery warnings in connected devices. The landlord, Malden Trifunovic, had intentionally designed the system to prioritize tenant privacy, meaning the renters, in this case, singer David and his associates, had full control over its operations. The owner couldn't remotely access any recordings, ensuring that whatever happened inside or around the property remained confidential unless law enforcement got involved. TMZ, the celebrity news outlet that first broke many details of the case, described the potential footage from this system as a goldmine for investigators, given its ability to chronicle who came and went during the critical period leading up to the discovery of 14-year-old Celeste recomposed remains in the front trunk of David's Tesla on September 8, 2025. This description underscored the system's comprehensiveness, as it could theoretically provide a minute-by-minute account of activities at the house, which was rented for around $20,000 a month and located near where the abandoned vehicle was parked. However, several peculiarities in the security setup raised red flags during the investigation, suggesting possible tampering or deliberate efforts to undermine its effectiveness. Private investigator Steve Fischer, hired by the landlord to dig deeper after feeling stonewalled by the Los Angeles Police Department, confirmed that some smoke detectors integrated into the system had been physically covered. Fischer speculated in interviews that this could stem from routine activities like smoking inside the house, but he acknowledged it was unusual because smoke sensors are rarely obscured unless someone wants to avoid triggering alarms, perhaps during illicit gatherings or other behaviors that might set them off. This anomaly extended to uncertainty about the cameras themselves. While Fischer couldn't confirm outright if they had been covered or disabled, he pointed to the covered sensors as a clue that similar interference might have occurred with the video components. If the cameras were indeed obstructed, the DVR might still have recorded non-visual data like door openings, but the crucial video evidence would be absent, creating gaps in the timeline. Adding to the oddities, TMZ reported early on that a Ring doorbell camera at the property had been smashed, a blatant act of destruction that typically signals an intent to eliminate visual records. Though Fischer didn't independently verify this specific detail, it fit into the broader pattern of irregularities. Furthermore, the system's power logs showed a low battery failure alert precisely when LAPD executed a search warrant on September 17, 2025, implying the setup was operational up until that point, but raising questions about whether it had been fully functional in the weeks prior, especially since the Tesla containing Celeste had been abandoned nearby since late July 2025. Compounding these issues, reports from the Homeowner Association's private security firm indicated unauthorized or unexplained activity at the house even after David left for his tour in late July. Despite David being on the road, someone accessed the property between the vehicle's abandonment and the API raid, a fact corroborated by video from neighborhood patrols, though the footage wasn't clear enough to identify the individual. With only one key to the house known to exist, this suggested that whoever had access might have also had the opportunity to meddle with the security system, perhaps to erase or alter records. In terms of footage seized and related probes, LAPD's September 17 search warrant execution resulted in the confiscation of the entire DVR system, along with footage from various cameras that could have captured comings and goings around the time Celeste's body was placed in the vehicle. TMZ confirmed that this included surveillance of entry points, potentially revealing if anyone entered or exited the house after it was parked nearby in late July. Fischer pinpointed July 29 as the exact date based on neighborhood videos he collected. During the raid, officers also inspected drains for blood or tissue traces as per TMZ reports, though no results have been publicly disclosed. Fischer, acting independently, gathered supplementary footage from adjacent homes, which showed the Tesla being moved to its final spot by an unidentified driver wearing distinctive clothing that matched photos from inside the mansion taken about 12 hours earlier. He promptly turned this over to LAPD, emphasizing that while it didn't originate from the house's system, it helped refine the timeline without proving a crime occurred on the property. The PI also uncovered digital media and other items not seized by police, which he handed over within 24 hours, aiding in piecing together events but not directly implicating the security anomalies. Earlier LAPD visits to the house added another layer to the narrative. On July 20, 2025, officers responded to a 911 call about a public nuisance involving noise at 40:38 a.m., but by the time they arrived at 80:57 a.m., the situation had resolved itself. No further 911 calls were logged from September 2024 through September 2025, which seemed odd given neighbors' complaints about the property being party house, with frequent loud gatherings. This history of disturbances could tie into why sensors might have been covered, to facilitate unchecked partying without alerts. Fischer's broader investigation revealed photos of Celeste alive as recently as July 25, taken by David at locations downtown Los Angeles, not at the Hollywood Hills home, suggesting she had another place to stay. These images, along with the security oddities, painted a picture of a chaotic environment where privacy measures might have been exploited. These anomalies in the security system strongly suggest an intent to conceal unlawful activities, weaving a tale of potential cover-ups amid a tragic death. The covered smoke sensors, for instance, hint at efforts to evade detection during events like controlled substances-fueled parties, as the house was notorious for noisy bashes that drew neighbor complaints. If cameras were similarly obscured, it would conveniently eliminate visual proof of who was present when Celeste might have OD, a theory Fischer initially favored, positing that her body was hidden in the Tesla to avoid exposing an underage relationship with David. The smashed Ring camera, as reported by TMZ, screams deliberate sabotage, especially if it captured footage of the body being moved or other incriminating acts. Destroying it would be a classic move to wipe out evidence, aligning with Fischer's chilling reference to scary sadistic stuff in potential plans to dispose of the remains, though he stressed those plans never materialized. The timeline bolsters this: the Tesla sat decomposing nearby from late July, yet someone still entered the locked house post-departure, possibly to tamper with the DVR or ensure no traces remained. This access, limited by the single key, implies insiders knew about the body but chose concealment over reporting it, supporting LAP's acknowledgement of at least a concealment of a body misdemeanor. The lack of full cooperation from LAP, prompting the landlord to hire Fischer, further fuels suspicions that the system was manipulated to restrict evidence flow. In the broader story, Celeste's journey from a troubled home, marked by a 2024 Ring camera video from a neighbor showing her in a family confrontation, to entanglement with David's world ended in mystery. Recent updates as of October 2025, including Fischer's confirmation of a 2025 photo proving she was alive well into the year, and her funeral on October 7 haven't clarified the security issues but highlight ongoing probes. Back to raid. One of the most striking irregularities during the LAPD's search of the Hollywood Hills mansion on September 17, 2025, was the failure to find a copy of the search warrant or the return. The inventory list of items seized, as required by California law. According to private investigator Steve Fischer, who was hired by the property's owner, Malden Trifunovic, this oversight was discovered only after the fact through Trifunovic's representative, who learned of the raid post-event. Standard procedure mandates that law enforcement provide these documents at the scene or shortly thereafter, yet Trifunovic, despite repeated requests, had not received either by October 18, 2025. This prompted him to enlist Fischer to investigate independently, as the lack of transparency raised concerns about what was taken and why. The absence of these documents delayed verification of the search scope and hinted at potential procedural errors, or an intentional effort by LAPD to withhold details to protect the ongoing investigation. Several factors might explain this anomaly, though no official clarification has been provided. The search was a forced entry operation, conducted without anyone present, as the tenant was on tour and the manager, Josh Marshall, resided out of state. Fischer suggested this could account for the failure to leave documents on site, as there was no one to receive them directly. However, California law requires that copies be sent to the property owner afterward, which didn't happen, amplifying suspicions. Reports from the outlets indicate LAP's reticence might stem from the case's sensitivity, particularly since the investigation involves potential evidence like blood or tissue in drains, and the cause of death remains undetermined pending toxicology results. Trifunovic's concern was heightened by his inability to access details about what was removed from his property, including the entire DVR system containing surveillance footage, which TMZ called a potential goldmine for investigators. The lack of a warrant copy and inventory list fueled Trifunovic's frustration, as he worried about the implications for his property and its connection to the case. Fischer, in an interview with LA Magazine, noted that this procedural lapse was a key reason for his involvement, as Trifunovic sought clarity on what LAPD had seized and whether it implicated activities at the mansion. The absence of these documents not only slowed efforts to understand the search's impact, but also suggested that LAPD might be tightly trolling information to avoid leaks in a high-profile investigation. This opacity, while possibly strategic, left Trifunovic in the dark, prompting his decision to hire Fischer to uncover answers independently. For the most controversial aspect, private investigator Steve Fischer leaned toward a theory that the death resulted from a tragic OD, a possibility he still considers viable. He reasoned that those involved might have made a poor decision, driven by a desire to avoid exposing a potential relationship between the individuals in question. In this scenario, the body was placed in the Tesla with the intention of enlisting someone else to dispose of the vehicle entirely, but that person backed out, saying something along the lines of refusing to handle it. This led to the car being abandoned, allowing the remains to decompose inside over time. Fischer emphasized the vehicle's prolonged disuse, noting it had been sitting idle for an extended period, covered in thick layers of dirt and grime, despite earlier evidence showing frequent activity, such as Instagram videos where the owner had taken it to a detailing shop for cleaning. The car seemed to vanish from regular use right at the start of the year, only reappearing when it was moved to its final parking spot in late July, specifically pinpointed to July 29, 2025, based on neighborhood surveillance footage that Fischer had gathered and analyzed. Delving deeper, Fischer revealed the existence of physical evidence found at the property that pointed to potentially more elaborate schemes for handling the situation, describing these as scary and sadistic in nature. He was careful not to disclose specifics, citing obvious sensitivities, but clarified that these plans had nothing to do with the actual cause of death. Instead, they focused solely on the intended method for ultimate disposal. Remarkably, none of these ideas ever progressed beyond the planning stage. They never went into motion, which meant, in Fischer's view, that no one could be prosecuted for mere thoughts of a crime, no matter how twisted. He mentioned ongoing efforts to uncover more details about this aspect, hinting that certain elements uncovered would astonish anyone who learned of them, underscoring the disturbing implications of what might have been contemplated. Central to Fischer's evolving hypothesis was the notion that the Tesla served merely as a temporary holding spot, a makeshift intermediary point, rather than the final destination for transport or processing. He suggested that the overall plan faltered due to mismatched timing, causing the remains to be left in the vehicle instead of being dealt with according to a larger scheme. Crucially, there was no evidence whatsoever of the body being transferred either before or after the car was positioned in its last spot. When it was parked there, the situation was already as it would be discovered. This implied that the remains might have been inside from an earlier point, with the vehicle remaining unused thereafter, reinforcing the idea of it as a stopgap measure in a disrupted sequence of events. Fischer's analysis implied that the eventual discovery of the remains, triggered by a foul odor at the impound lot after the car was towed on September 5, 2025, and confirmed on September 8, was the outcome of carelessness or a botched plan, rather than any deliberate attempt to frame or entrap the car's owner. He avoided suggesting any conspiratorial setup for incrimination, focusing instead on how the disposal strategy fell apart before activation, leaving the vehicle stranded due to hasty choices or a refusal from an accomplice. Evidence indicated that someone continued to access the property even after the owner departed for a tour, from late July through September 17, 2025, as per reports from the Homeowner Association's private security firm. This individual might have represented the final link in the chain for handling the matter, but the effort evidently failed. Fischer claimed knowledge of the person who moved the Tesla to its ultimate location in late July, just before the tour commenced, and had shared this with LAPD, though he withheld the identity publicly, and authorities offered no confirmation. This detail added weight to the narrative of oversight rather than malice, painting a picture of improvised actions gone awry rather than a calculated trap. Throughout his recounting, Fischer drew on various pieces of gathered media and timelines to support these ideas, such as photos placing the deceased alive as late as July 2025, early in the morning, which helped refine the sequence without pinpointing the exact moment of demise. He noted shifts in patterns around January or February, observable in images and activities, suggesting a turning point where things began to change. The red Tesla found in the garage, released on February 1, contrasted with the black one's inactivity, hinting at evolving circumstances. Neighborhood videos not only confirmed the black Tesla's relocation, but also captured a tour bus departing shortly after, aligning with the departure timeline and underscoring how quickly events escalated post-parking. Fischer's approach involved cross-referencing public Instagram posts and other digital traces to make sense of the lives involved, revealing a web of connections that made the OD cover-up seem plausible at first glance. Yet, the sadistic undertones in the unexecuted plans introduced a darker layer, prompting his continued probing into items left unseized during the official search, which he turned over to authorities within a day. These elements collectively illustrated a scenario where negligence, not premeditated sabotage, led to the exposure, with the vehicle caught in limbo amid faltering intentions. Reveal the whole truth. By strange coincidence, in the latest coverage of the case, TMZ has provided several compelling hints about the truth behind the incident, steering away from initial assumptions of homicide toward a more complex narrative involving a possible OD, while raising questions about the roles and intentions of those connected to the events, like what Detective Steve Fischer said above. TMZ emerged as the primary trailblazer in covering the unfolding story surrounding Celeste Rivas Hernandez's death, delivering a barrage of exclusive details right from the outset. As the first outlet to drop bombshell reports, TMZ flooded the public with intricate accounts, including vivid descriptions of the scene, photographs that captured the essence of the environment, and video footage showcasing lively gatherings at the property in question. This initial wave of coverage painted a vivid picture that steered public opinion toward viewing the incident as a potential murder, with singer David, whose real name is David Anthony Burke, positioned squarely as the top suspect in the eyes of many. TMZ's reports highlighted connections that seemed damning at first glance, such as matching tattoos and sightings that suggested a close association, fueling widespread speculation and turning the narrative into a media frenzy almost overnight. In a series of livestream sessions, particularly those aired toward the end of September 2025 on platforms like TMZ Live, Harvey Levin, the outlet's founder and a veteran in celebrity journalism, made pointed admissions about possessing insider knowledge that he couldn't fully disclose. During one notable broadcast, Levin openly acknowledged having access to sensitive information from reliable sources, but emphasized that he was restrained from spilling it because the case was inherently complicated. He stressed the need for rigorous vetting to prevent disseminating inaccurate details, which could erode TMZ's credibility or even invite legal repercussions. Levin recounted how TMZ's team often pursues leads that turn out to be dead ends, and he underscored their commitment to only airing verified facts, saying something along the lines of, "There are certain things I'll tell you if I know something, and if I can tell you I will, but I'm not able to do this story and it's complicated." This approach, he explained, was about maintaining journalistic integrity in a high-stakes environment where rushed judgments could backfire spectacularly. The reluctance to reveal everything stemmed from a web of factors tied to ongoing law enforcement efforts and TMZ's internal policies against unfounded conjecture. Levin hinted that much of their intel came directly from police sources, who were still piecing together the puzzle amid pending toxicology reports and detailed evidence analysis. For instance, in discussions with LAP Captain Scott Williams, as reported by TMZ, it became clear that determining the exact cause of death was pivotal, and without concrete findings from the medical examiner, labeling it as anything specific, like a homicide or otherwise, would be premature. Levin elaborated on air that this complexity meant avoiding wild guesses, as TMZ had learned from past experiences where unverified stories led to backlash. Yet, even while holding back, Levin cleverly sprinkled hints, drawn from logical deductions and established facts, allowing viewers to fill in the blanks themselves. This tactic served as a subtle way to retract or soften earlier implications without crossing ethical lines, effectively walking back the initial narrative that had cast such a heavy shadow over David. Shifting gears in his commentary, Levin floated the possibility that the tragedy might not involve deliberate foul play at all, but rather an accidental OD or some unintended mishap. He painted a scenario rooted in the property's reputation as a party house, where raucous gatherings were commonplace, often drawing complaints from neighbors about the noise and chaos. Levin speculated that Celeste could have been caught up in one of these events, perhaps a big bash the Sunday before her remains were discovered, where she ingested something hazardous, leading to a fatal reaction. In this hypothetical, panic might have ensued among those present, prompting someone to conceal the body rather than report it immediately. Levin drew from neighbor accounts TMZ had gathered, describing how the house was notorious for frequent parties, with one resident recalling constant disturbances that disrupted the neighborhood. He even shared a story from his own past living on Dini Drive, noting how street cleaning rules made it a risky spot for leaving vehicles unattended, underscoring the illogic of intentionally hiding evidence there. Delving deeper into why the events didn't align with typical murder behavior, Levin dissected the discovery site with sharp reasoning. The body was located in the frunk of a Tesla registered to David, parked on Dini Drive, a bustling residential street prone to towing due to municipal regulations. Levin argued this setup made no sense for a calculated killer, especially since David was away on tour for much of August 2025, leaving the car vulnerable to impoundment. He pointed out that anyone familiar with the area, like himself from his time residing there, would know about the ticketing and towing risks, making it an improbable choice for disposal. Furthermore, Levin suggested that data from the Tesla's cameras might not show anyone placing the body inside, implying the timeline of decomposition, potentially spanning 2 weeks, didn't match a scenario where David orchestrated it before departing. He recounted a hypothetical where, if David had any involvement, he might have later realized the issue and called a friend to move the car. But no such action occurred, further eroding the murder theory in his view. Central to Levin's hints was the pivotal role of the toxicology report and other evidentiary elements in untangling the mess. He explained that these reports typically take months due to backlogs at the medical examiner's office, though high-profile cases like this could jump the queue. The LAPD, as Captain Williams confirmed to TMZ, was collaborating closely with the examiner to pinpoint substances in Celeste's system, which could clarify if controlled substances played a part. Levin noted the added challenge from the body's post-mortem dismemberment, which complicated identifying the cause of death without obvious signs like a gunshot wound. He speculated that the case's complicated label might stem from possibilities of framing, where someone else used David's vehicle to shift blame. Police were meticulously reviewing Tesla data, including potential video footage, but Levin cautioned against quick conclusions, reiterating that without these results, rushing to call it a homicide was irresponsible. More recent updates, as Levin touched on in October 2025 livestreams like the one on October 14, have added layers to the evolving picture. The death certificate, obtained and analyzed by TMZ, deferred the cause of death pending further tests and explicitly debunked rumors of pregnancy, stating Celeste had not been pregnant in the past year. No suspects have been named publicly, with the investigation remaining intensely focused but hampered by California's limited transparency in ongoing probes. Levin suggested this could signal a pivot toward lesser charges, such as improper handling of remains if evidence rules out murder. He referenced LAPD's raid on the Hollywood Hills rental where David stayed, searching for blood evidence, yet no arrests followed. Additionally, the district attorney's office, under Nathan Hochman, has stayed mum, confirming the case hasn't reached them yet. Levin wove in anecdotes from sources, like friends in David's circle who believed Celeste was 19 and viewed her as his girlfriend, expressing shock at her true age and the connections drawn. He also highlighted the property owner's decision to hire a private investigator for independent insights, frustrated by the LAPD's silence weeks after the discovery. Through these details, Levin continued to nudge the audience toward considering alternative narratives, like Celeste's history of running away from a troubled home, which TMZ explored through interviews with her former middle school boyfriend and a liquor store owner who aided in past searches. This backstory, including multiple disappearances in 2024 and family efforts to trace her, painted her as vulnerable, potentially drawn into risky environments without malicious intent from those around her. As what Levin suggested, David Anthony Burke, known as David, is undeniably entangled in the circumstances surrounding Celeste Rivas Hernandez's death, given the events likely unfolded at his residence. As the occupant of the Hollywood Hills rental, he may well have been the one orchestrating or hosting the gatherings that neighbors described as frequent and disruptive. The property's reputation as a hub for raucous parties places David at the center of the environment where Celeste's fate was sealed, whether or not he directly caused it. His involvement deepens with the fact that the Tesla, registered in his name, was where her remains were found in the frunk, a discovery that inherently ties him to the scene. The vehicle's presence on Denny Drive, a busy street, raises questions about how and why it ended up there, especially since David was on tour for much of August 2025. This connection, while not proof of guilt, makes him a focal point in the investigation, as the car's ownership and its grim contents point to some level of responsibility, even if indirect. Compounding this are the mounting pieces of evidence illuminating the relationship between David and Celeste, which has become increasingly clear through public sightings and shared details. Matching tattoos, social media interactions, and accounts from their circle suggest a close bond, possibly romantic, with some claiming Celeste was seen as his girlfriend. These ties strengthen the case for his involvement, as they indicate she was a regular presence in his life and at his home. Yet, despite this, authorities have not definitively labeled him the perpetrator. The absence of an arrest as of October 2025, coupled with ongoing evidence analysis like Tesla camera data, suggests that while David remains a key figure, the threshold for charging him as a murderer hasn't been met. His cooperation with police, including the seizure of his devices on September 17, 2025, adds complexity, as does his decision to cancel his tour and transfer assets to his mother, possibly to shield them. Celeste, the clear victim in this tragedy, was not entirely passive in the events leading to her death. Her history as a runaway and her apparent comfort in David's world suggest she actively engaged in the party scene at his residence. Sources indicate she was in the mix at these events, potentially drawn in by the allure of the lifestyle or her connection with David. This active participation could have led her to consume something dangerous, resulting in a fatal OD. Her presence at a large gathering, like the one neighbors reported the Sunday before her body was found, points to her making choices within that environment, though her youth and vulnerability underscore the tragedy of her being there at all. The body. Based on what we know so far, we can start to piece together how this case might have actually unfolded, the moments leading up to it, the cover-up that followed, and maybe even who was truly behind it. Not just who, but how many. Because when you look closely at the evidence, it starts to feel less like one person's crime, and more like a chain of decisions that spiraled completely out of control. In the days leading up to a major tour, set to begin in late July or early August 2025, a series of extravagant parties unfolded at a Hollywood Hills mansion, transforming it into a chaotic hub of revelry. These gatherings, marked by the presence of numerous friends, acquaintances, and possibly a young woman named Celeste, were steeped in the use of controlled substances, creating an environment ripe for reckless behavior. The house had earned a reputation as a notorious party house. Its loud, disruptive events frequently drawing complaints from neighbors who were fed up with the constant noise and commotion. Celeste, who may have misrepresented herself as 19 years old despite being significantly younger, was likely drawn into this scene, mingling with the crowd and exposed to the dangerous substances circulating freely. The atmosphere, charged with excess and little oversight, set the stage for a potential tragedy, as the unchecked consumption of illicit, controlled substances heightened the risk of an accidental OD among the attendees. During one of these raucous parties, Celeste may have consumed a lethal amount of controlled substances, leading to a sudden and fatal OD. The absence of any visible signs of violence, no wounds, no crushed skull, no bullet holes, suggests that her death was not the result of deliberate harm but rather a tragic mishap tied to controlled substance use. This aligns with the ongoing wait for toxicology results to confirm the exact cause, pointing to an accidental rather than intentional act. Those present at the time, including the central figure and others in the group, likely descended into panic upon discovering her lifeless body. Fearful of the repercussions, potentially tied to a rumored relationship with Celeste, whether romantic or social, and her underage status, they opted against alerting authorities immediately. Instead, in a rushed and desperate move, they chose to conceal the body in the front trunk of a Tesla, a discreet and accessible hiding spot that seemed practical in the moment, but would prove catastrophic later. In the wake of this chaos, the central figure hastily departed for the tour, possibly within days, around late July or early August 2025, leaving the situation unresolved in a state of panic and anxiety. Likely overwhelmed, he may have arranged for someone to handle the fallout at the house, entrusting them to deal with the hidden body and any incriminating evidence from the party. However, he did not stay to oversee the process, a decision that led to the Tesla being left on a busy residential street near the property, vulnerable to local street sweeping and towing regulations. This choice reflected a lack of clear planning, as abandoning the vehicle in such a conspicuous location virtually guaranteed its discovery. During this period, he might have reached out to a lawyer or manager to prepare for potential consequences, but the failure to report the incident immediately underscored the impulsive, fear-driven nature of the response, setting the stage for the unraveling of the cover-up. After his departure, someone remained at or returned to the mansion to clean up, attempting to erase traces of the party and the body hidden in the Tesla. This individual, tasked with managing the aftermath, acted carelessly, moving the vehicle to its final resting spot on July 29, 2025, but failing to ensure it was secure or discreet. The Tesla was left in a public area, exposed to routine towing operations, which occurred on September 5, 2025, when the car was impounded. By September 8, a foul odor led to the grim discovery of the remains, exposing the entire incident. The mishandling was evident in the lack of thorough checks on the vehicle, the failure to execute any larger plan for disposing of the body, potentially involving more sinister methods that were never carried out, and the disregard for local towing schedules. This carelessness ensured the situation came to light, not as a deliberate attempt to frame anyone, but as a botched effort to conceal a tragic mistake, complicating the subsequent investigation and leaving lingering questions about the sequence of events. It's clear that the identity of the individual who might have stayed behind to tidy up after the departure remains a point of speculation. Given the limited access to the property and the single key in play, this person could be anyone closely tied to the central figure, perhaps a trusted associate with logistical responsibilities, who returned or lingered to handle any loose ends. Such a role would involve managing the aftermath of recent activities, ensuring nothing incriminating was left behind, but errors in execution could stem from haste or inexperience. For instance, overlooking local regulations or failing to secure items properly might lead to unintended exposure. Among possible candidates, the manager stands out as a logical fit, given his involvement in day-to-day operations and his history of stepping in during critical moments. His familiarity with the setup, including handling contracts and follow-ups, positions him as someone who could discreetly address issues without drawing attention. Josh Marshall emerges as a prime possibility in this scenario, considering his deep-rooted connection to the artist he represents. Their partnership began early in the artist's career, back when viral success was just taking off with tracks like Romantic Homicide. And Marshall, as the founder of Mogul Vision, played a pivotal role in shaping that trajectory. He secured key deals, such as the collaboration with Interscope Geffen A&M Records in 2023, which elevated the artist's profile and opened doors to larger opportunities. This cooperation extended beyond music production. Marshall managed tours, handled promotions, and navigated the complexities of building a brand in a competitive industry. Stories from industry insiders highlight how Marshall's strategic guidance helped the artist transition from online buzz to mainstream recognition, including negotiating contracts that protected creative control while maximizing exposure. Their dynamic is one of mutual reliance, with M acting as a gatekeeper for personal and professional matters, often stepping in to resolve conflicts or streamline logistics. If Marshall were the one managing the cleanup, it could stem from a protective instinct forged through years of collaboration. Having signed the lease on the Hollywood Hills property himself, keeping the artist's name off the paperwork, he would have had direct oversight and access, making it feasible for him to return and address any unresolved issues. His actions in similar past situations, like coordinating post-event wrap-ups or dealing with venue aftermaths during tours, demonstrate a pattern of handling behind-the-scenes tasks to shield the artist from distractions. This level of involvement suggests he might take on such a role to prevent disruptions that could derail ongoing projects, ensuring continuity in their shared ventures. The potential downsides for Marshall if the artist faced scrutiny or worse, a conviction, would be profound on multiple fronts. Economically, the fallout could be devastating. As a manager typically earning 15 to 20% of the artist's income, he would suffer immediate losses from canceled tours, dropped endorsements, and halted music releases. For example, the artist's rising trajectory, bolstered by Marshall's negotiations for high-profile deals, could evaporate, leading to forfeited royalties and future contracts. Stories abound in the music world of managers like him who have seen their commissions plummet when clients encounter scandals, forcing them to rebuild from scratch or pivot to less lucrative talent. On the branding side, Marshall's reputation as a reliable executive would take a severe hit. Having built Mogul Vision around discovering and nurturing young talents, any association with controversy could tarnish his image, making it harder to attract new artists or secure partnerships with labels. Industry anecdotes reveal how managers in similar predicaments have been sidelined, with their once sterling networks drying up as collaborators distance themselves to avoid guilt by association. This could undermine years of effort in positioning himself as a visionary in the field, potentially leading to a loss of credibility that ripples through his entire operation. Legally, the risks escalate if involvement in any cover-up were proven, exposing Marshall to charges of complicity or obstruction. Even without direct culpability, an investigation could drag him into costly legal battles, including subpoenas or civil suits that drain resources and time. Tales from entertainment circles illustrate how managers entangled in their clients' troubles often face parallel probes, resulting in fines, settlements, or worse, criminal records that bar them from future dealings. The intertwined nature of their professional bond means any adverse outcome for the artist could implicate Marshall's decisions, amplifying the stakes and motivating thorough protective measures. Beyond the immediate circle, other possibilities include close friends or hired help with temporary access, but their motivations would lack the depth of a long-term stakeholder like Marshall. His track record of loyalty, seen in public defenses and behind-the-scenes support, underscores why he might prioritize containment to safeguard their joint successes. The changes. If the hypothesis holds true, the investigation would pivot significantly, shifting away from the pursuit of a deliberate act of violence toward a focus on an accidental death followed by efforts to conceal it. The case would no longer center on identifying a perpetrator of murder, but instead on determining who was responsible for the mishandling of the situation after the fact. This reorientation would redirect investigative efforts toward analyzing evidence like surveillance footage and toxicology reports to establish a timeline and pinpoint accountability, rather than seeking signs of intentional harm. The absence of clear physical trauma, such as wounds or fractures, would support the idea that the death was not premeditated, prompting authorities to explore charges related to negligence or improper conduct rather than felony-level offenses. The vehicle involved, previously seen as a potential crime scene, would be viewed as a temporary hiding place, with its discovery resulting from oversight rather than a calculated setup. This shift would likely slow the legal process, as prosecutors would await comprehensive forensic results to clarify the circumstances, potentially leading to lighter charges or even non-criminal resolutions depending on the findings. The primary individual, as the central figure associated with the property and the vehicle, would bear significant responsibility for the events leading up to the death. If the gathering at the Hollywood Hills house contributed to the incident, he could face accusations of negligence, particularly for creating an environment where risky activities occurred unchecked. Legal consequences might include charges like reckless endangerment, especially if it's determined that the setting he facilitated indirectly led to the fatal outcome. Additionally, if he was aware of the body's presence in the vehicle and chose to conceal it rather than report it, he could be charged with concealment of a body, a misdemeanor in California carrying penalties like fines up to $100,000 or up to a year in jail. More serious charges, such as involuntary manslaughter, could arise if evidence shows he played a direct role in enabling the circumstances of the death, though this would hinge on forensic findings. Beyond legal ramifications, his public image as a high-profile figure would take a hit, with canceled endorsements and paused projects reflecting the immediate fallout, potentially costing millions in lost revenue and brand value. The person tasked with cleaning up after the primary individual's departure would also face scrutiny, particularly for their role in the botched aftermath. If this individual moved the vehicle to its final location on July 29, 2025, and failed to ensure it was secure, they could be held accountable for contributing to the discovery of the body due to negligence. Charges like accessory after-the-fact apply if they knowingly attempted to cover up the incident, with penalties including up to 7 years in prison under California Penal Code Section 32, depending on the severity of the underlying offense. If identified as the manager, their responsibility would be amplified by their professional duty to protect their clients' interests. Failing to properly manage the situation, leaving the vehicle in a public spot prone to towing, could expose them to legal action for obstruction of justice, especially if they withheld information from authorities. Others present at the gathering could share responsibility, particularly if they contributed to the environment that led to the incident. If evidence shows they were involved in the activity surrounding the death, they might face charges of endangering a minor, given the victim's age, which could carry fines or jail time under California law. Their failure to report the death immediately could also lead to accusations of concealing evidence, though their culpability would likely be secondary compared to the central figure and the cleanup individual. If surveillance footage identifies multiple people accessing the property or vehicle, they could be summoned as witnesses or charged as co-conspirators in the cover-up, depending on their actions. Civil lawsuits from the victim's family, seeking damages for wrongful death, could further complicate matters, with potential settlements reaching substantial sums if negligence is proven. The legal trajectory will likely favor lighter charges, aligning with the hypothesis that the incident was accidental rather than malicious. Prosecutors would rely heavily on forensic evidence, such as toxicology reports, to confirm the absence of foul play, potentially limiting charges to misdemeanors like improper disposal of a body or failure to report a death. The lack of an immediate case filing, as noted by the district attorney, suggests a cautious approach, with authorities unwilling to pursue aggressive charges without clear evidence of intent. This could result in probation, community service, or fines rather than lengthy prison terms, especially if the primary individual and others cooperate fully. However, the public and media perception would shift dramatically, moving from sensational headlines about a potential murder to a narrative of reckless behavior and poor judgment, prompting broader discussions about accountability in high-profile circles. For the manager, if involved, the stakes are particularly high due to their professional relationship with the artist. Beyond legal risks, their reputation as a trusted industry figure would suffer, potentially alienating other clients and partners. Stories of managers caught in similar scandals illustrate the ripple effects loss of trust from record labels, promoters, and artists can lead to a near-total collapse of their business. The manager's role in securing the lease for the property and handling post-incident logistics, like retrieving another vehicle from the garage, places them in a precarious position where any misstep could be seen as complicity. If they were aware of the situation and chose to act without notifying authorities, they could face civil claims alongside criminal charges, with damages potentially escalating if the victim's family pursues litigation. The broader group at the gathering, while less central, would not escape scrutiny. If identified through footage or other evidence, they could be held accountable for contributing to a hazardous environment, particularly given the underage status of the victim. Charges like contributing to the delinquency of a minor could apply, with penalties including up to a year in jail or fines up to $2,500. Their involvement in the cover-up, even if peripheral, could lead to summonses or minor charges, especially if they failed to intervene or report the incident. The financial impact for these individuals would vary, but public exposure could damage personal reputations, particularly if they're tied to the entertainment industry. The family of the victim, though not directly responsible, could influence the case's direction through civil action. If they pursue a wrongful death lawsuit, they might target the primary individual for creating the unsafe setting, seeking damages for emotional and financial loss. Such suits often result in settlements ranging from hundreds of thousands to millions, depending on the evidence of negligence. The family's troubled history, marked by multiple police interventions, might be used to argue the victim's actions were independent, potentially mitigating liability for others, but their legal recourse would still pose a significant threat to those involved. Public perception would play a crucial role in shaping the consequences. The primary individual's career, already disrupted by canceled tours and lost deals, would face long-term challenges, though a narrative of accidental death might allow for partial recovery through strategic public relations. The manager's professional standing would hinge on their ability to distance themselves from any direct involvement, but industry fallout could be severe, with competitors capitalizing on their weakened position. The broader group's accountability would depend on their visibility in the case, with public shaming potentially outweighing legal penalties for those on the fringes. The case's shift toward an accidental framework would reduce the intensity of legal scrutiny, focusing on accountability for concealment rather than murder. The primary individual would face the heaviest burden, with charges reflecting their role in the environment and response. The cleanup person, potentially the manager, would be accountable for their failure to execute effectively, facing both legal and professional repercussions. Others at the scene would bear secondary responsibility, primarily through minor charges or civil claims, while the family's pursuit of justice could amplify the financial and reputational toll for all involved. The other evidence. Until now, the investigation into the Hollywood Hills incident remains shrouded in mystery, with several key pieces of evidence yet to be disclosed publicly, holding the potential to reshape the case's direction. One of the most critical is the toxicology report from the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office, which is still pending as of October 18, 2025. This report, designed to identify any substances in the system at the time of death, could confirm whether the incident stemmed from an accidental overdose or point to other causes, fundamentally altering whether the case is treated as a tragic mishap or something more deliberate. Typically, such reports take months due to backlogs, but high-profile cases can be expedited, leaving open the question of why results remain outstanding. The absence of this data keeps the cause of death listed as deferred, raising speculation about whether the findings might reveal no foul play, thus shifting focus to subsequent actions rather than the death itself. Without this report, investigators and the public are left wondering if the incident was preventable and who, if anyone, directly contributed to it. Surveillance footage from the mansion's sophisticated security system, seized by the LA during the September 17, 2025 raid, represents another trove of unreleased evidence. This system, equipped with cameras monitoring entry points and sensors tracking door and window activity, was fully confiscated, including its DVR, which could contain a detailed log of movements at the property. Reports suggest this footage might reveal who accessed the house between late July, when the vehicle was parked, and mid-September, potentially capturing party activities or post-incident cleanup efforts. The property owner, respecting tenant privacy, has not viewed it, and no public details have emerged about its contents. A related anomaly, a reportedly smashed Ring doorbell camera, adds intrigue, promptings about whether someone intentionally sabotaged the system to hide evidence. Was the footage intact, or were cameras covered or disabled, as hinted by covered smoke sensors? Could it show the vehicle's movement or confirm who was present during critical moments? These uncertainties amplify the footage's importance, as it might clarify the timeline and identify key players. Neighborhood surveillance videos, separate from the mansion's system, offer another layer of undisclosed evidence. These recordings, collected from nearby homes, pinpoint the Tesla's relocation to its final spot on July 29, 2025, and reportedly show the driver, whose identity remains withheld. This footage is crucial for establishing who handled the vehicle, and whether they knew what it contained, but its full contents, such as additional angles or timestamps, have not been shared. Did these videos capture other individuals or vehicles involved? Could they reveal interactions that explain why the car was left in a public area prone to towing? The lack of clarity fuels questions about whether the driver acted alone or under instruction, and why they failed to secure the vehicle more discreetly. Physical evidence from the property, described as suggesting a disturbing plan to handle the situation, remains another undisclosed element. These items, distinct from the cause of death, hint at a scheme that never materialized, characterized as chillingly elaborate. Their nature, whether objects, documents, or something else, is unknown, leaving open questions about what was intended and by whom. Could these items point to a coordinated effort to avoid detection? And if so, why was the plan abandoned? The fact that they were not initially seized by LAPD during the raid but later turned over suggests they might be peripheral yet still pivotal in understanding the mindset of those involved. Were they tools, plans, or traces of a cover-up gone awry? Their secrecy keeps the public guessing about the extent of premeditation. The raid itself yielded electronics and computers, alongside of the mansion's drains for blood or tissue, but no detailed inventory has been released. The absence of this return list, a standard requirement under California law, leaves the property owner and investigators in the dark about what was taken. Were these devices communication tools containing messages or data about the events? Did the drain checks reveal anything incriminating, or do they rule out certain scenarios? These unanswered questions underscore the importance of the seized items, as they could link specific individuals to the scene or clarify the absence of violent acts at the property. Digital media, including photographs and other data not initially taken by LTA, adds another dimension. A photo from July 2025, showing the individual live possibly taken downtown, helps narrow the timeline but raises questions about her movements afterward. Other digital materials, like chat logs or social media interactions, could reveal relationships or plans, especially given hints of Discord conversations and an unreleased song referencing the individual. What do these files contain? Casual exchanges, evidence of deception about age, or discussions about the aftermath? Their undisclosed contents could confirm or refute claims about what certain parties knew, and when potentially mitigating or escalating legal consequences. Reports from the Homeowner Association's private security firm indicate someone accessed the mansion between late July and September 17, 2025, despite the primary occupant's absence. With only one key to the property, this evidence is critical for identifying who might have attempted to manage the situation post-incident. Who was this person, and what were they doing? Cleaning, retrieving items, or something else? Did they have knowledge of the vehicle's contents, And if so, why didn't they act more decisively? The lack of clarity about these reports leaves open whether this individual was acting alone or under direction, and whether their actions were negligent or intentional. The collective weight of these unreleased pieces of evidence could redefine the case's trajectory. The toxicology report might confirm an accidental death, reducing the focus on violent crime and centering accountability on those who failed to report it. The mansion's surveillance could pinpoint who was present and when, potentially exonerating some or implicating others in a cover-up. Neighborhood footage might identify the driver, clarifying whether they acted carelessly or with intent. The physical evidence of a planned disposal, though unexecuted, could reveal motives, even if not legally actionable, while seized electronics might expose communications that clarify relationships or decisions. The digital media, particularly photos and online interactions, could establish a timeline or prove claims about mistaken identity, impacting potential charges. Finally, the security firm's reports could name the person who lingered, shedding light on their role in the mishandling that led to the discovery. Each piece, if revealed, could answer lingering questions. Was the death truly accidental? Who knew about the body and when? Why was the vehicle left so carelessly? Did the plan to conceal involve multiple people, or was it a solo act gone wrong? Until these details emerge, the case remains a puzzle, with the truth locked behind evidence that could either close the matter quietly or escalate its consequences dramatically. The direction. For the expectation of the trial, the investigation into the Hollywood Hills case continues to unfold at a measured pace, with law enforcement and private parties alike poised for potential breakthroughs in the coming weeks. As of October 18, 2025, the Los Angeles Police Department remains firmly in control, methodically sifting through evidence without naming suspects or persons of interest, a stance that suggests a deliberate avoidance of premature conclusions. Experts anticipate that the toxicology report from the county medical examiner's office will emerge as the linchpin, potentially within the next 2 to 4 weeks if prioritized amid the backlog. This document, still pending, holds the power to redefine the narrative. If it points to natural or accidental causes without signs of trauma, the case could swiftly transition from a high-stakes homicide probe to a more contained inquiry into concealment and negligence. Prosecutors would then likely pivot to lesser charges, such as improper disposal of remains, which carry fines and short jail terms rather than lengthy sentences. The absence of arrests so far underscores this cautious trajectory, with insiders noting that without concrete forensic ties to foul play, the district attorney's office, led by Nathan Hochman, may decline to file charges altogether, opting instead for a closed file status if evidence proves inconclusive. Private investigator Steve Fischer, retained by the property owner, is expected to ramp up his independent efforts, potentially releasing more findings by late October or early November. His recent interviews have teased revelations, such as pinpointing the timeline of the vehicle's movement on July 29, 2025, and identifying a possible driver through neighborhood surveillance. Fisher's work could pressure the LAP to accelerate analysis of the seized DVR footage from the mansion's security system, which remains under wraps. If his probe uncovers additional digital media or physical items hinting at unexecuted plans for disposal, it might corroborate a narrative of panic-driven errors, further diluting any murder angle. This could manifest in collaborative briefings by Fisher and detectives, leading to refined timelines that exonerate certain individuals or implicate peripheral figures in minor cover-up roles. By mid-November, expect Fisher to file a preliminary report with the owner, possibly triggering media leaks that force official updates, though his discretion, rooted in respect for the ongoing probe, may temper the pace. The district attorney's office, having received no formal case file as of October 15, 2025, is forecasted to convene a review panel once preliminary forensics land on their desk, likely by December if delays persist. Hochman's recent comments to reporters indicate a threshold for action, sufficient evidence beyond mere concealment. Should the toxicology lean accidental, the DA could pursue misdemeanor counts against Loke to the vehicle's abandonment, with plea deals emphasizing community service and restitution to the family. Conversely, if traces suggest enabling circumstances, involuntary manslaughter could enter the picture, though legal analysts predict probation over incarceration given the lack of direct violence. This phase might involve grand jury consultations in early 2026, weighing witness statements from party attendees or associates, but the DA's track record in similar celebrity-adjacent matters favors swift resolutions to avoid prolonged trials that captivate public attention without guaranteed convictions. For the central figure, David Anthony Burke, known professionally as David, his silence through high-powered attorney Blair Burke is likely to persist, with Burke orchestrating behind-the-scenes negotiations to mitigate exposure. Recent moves, like transferring Texas property deeds to his mother around October 10, 2025, Signal preparations for asset protection amid potential civil suits, a tactic Burke has employed in past defenses. David's canceled tour dates, paused album promotions, and severed brand ties, echoed by figures like Addison Rae and Ice Spice, point to a career on hold. But if the case veers toward non-criminal closure, a calculated reemergence could follow by spring 2026. Public relations strategists foresee a narrative pivot, statements framing him as deceived about ages and ensnared in tragedy, perhaps accompanied by a reflective track echoing his unreleased Celeste song. However, escalating scrutiny, including swatting incidents at a Texas residence, may necessitate enhanced security and relocation, prolonging his withdrawal from the spotlight until clearances arrive. The family of the deceased, having laid her to rest on October 6, 2025, at Queen of Heaven Cemetery, is positioned to influence the next chapter through civil litigation. Their GoFundMe efforts and prior tips to authorities suggest a proactive stance, potentially filing a wrongful death claim by November if negligence in the environment is substantiated. This could yield settlements in the low millions, pressuring involved parties to cooperate more fully with LAPD interviews. The mother's accounts of multiple meetings with David and Discord interactions might surface in depositions, bolstering claims of foreseeability. If the toxicology absolves direct causation, the suit may focus on emotional distress from concealment, drawing parallels to high-profile negligence cases that netted substantial payouts without criminal convictions. Manager Josh Marshall, as the lease signatory and logistics handler, faces a shadowed path ahead, with whispers of his potential role in post-departure access fueling speculation. His denial of prior emails from the family's circle could unravel under subpoena, prompting LAP to subpoena his communications by late October. If linked to the vehicle's relocation, he might negotiate immunity for testimony, but reputational damage to his mogul vision firm could cascade, eroding client trust and forcing a pivot to lower-profile talent. Industry observers predict a quiet exit from major deals if the probe implicates him peripherally. The property owner, Malden Trifunovic, through Fischer's lens, may escalate demands for LAP transparency on the unprovided search warrant copy and inventory list by November, potentially filing a formal complaint or civil action for damages if unreleased footage reveals property harm. This could catalyze a partial evidence dump, illuminating the security system's role and hastening timeline confirmations. Broader media and public dynamics will evolve, with viral podcasts and X threads dissecting updates, from Crime Junkie episodes recapping timelines to user-generated theories on concealment motives. By December, if no charges materialize, coverage may wane, shifting to cultural reckonings on youth vulnerability in celebrity orbits, spurring advocacy for runaway prevention. Conversely, a toxicology bombshell could reignite frenzy, with TMZ's Harvey Levin poised for on-air reversals if initial hunches falter. Into 2026, the case might culminate in a coroner's inquest if unresolved, convening experts to opine on the manner of death, potentially closing the file by mid-year absent new leads. David's orbit, friends, associates, could yield compelled testimonies clarifying access patterns and dispelling rumors of deeper entanglements. The IDI's Robbery Homicide Division, undeterred by backlogs, will likely cross-reference digital traces like deleted posts or Discord logs, unearthing relational nuances that either vindicate or ensnare. Ultimately, the probe's denouement hinges on forensic patience, with a non-violent resolution favoring quiet accountability, fines, apologies, and reforms over spectacle. Yet, persistent questions about the single key, unexplained access, and unexecuted schemes ensure the narrative lingers, a cautionary echo in Hollywood's underbelly, awaiting that elusive report to silence or amplify the whispers. The ongoing investigation serves as a stark reminder of how cases involving high-profile figures can ignite fierce public debates, amplifying both fascination and division. When a celebrity is entangled in a controversy, the spotlight intensifies, transforming a tragedy into a spectacle that fuels endless speculation. Social media platforms and news outlets amplify every detail, often outpacing verified facts. As seen in the rapid spread of rumors about David Anthony Burke's involvement, this case exemplifies how fame can distort perceptions of justice, with initial assumptions painting a narrative of guilt that later evidence may unravel. The public's rush to judge, fueled by early leaks and provocative headlines, underscores the challenge of balancing scrutiny with fairness, raising questions about whether celebrity status inherently tilts the scales. Does it shield the accused or invite harsher condemnation? The prolonged nature of the investigation acts as a double-edged sword, cutting both ways in the court of public opinion. On one hand, the delay draws criticism for perceived inefficiencies, with some arguing it reflects a system overly cautious with the famous, potentially delaying justice for the victim's family. On the other, it provides a critical window to ensure a thorough probe, avoiding hasty charges that could collapse under scrutiny. As evidence emerges suggesting David may not be directly culpable, such as indications of an accidental death or others' roles in the aftermath, the community splits sharply. Supporters rally behind him, citing his youth and possible deception about the victim's age, while detractors demand accountability, pointing to his presence in the environment. This polarization begs the question, are we too quick to vilify? Or is skepticism warranted when fame is involved? With no official resolution as the time this was written, the case highlights the delicate balance of rights in such high-stakes scenarios. Every individual, David, his associates, the victim's family, retains the right to silence or to speak out, deserving a complete and unbiased investigation. Yet, the lack of closure fuels ongoing debates, leaving room for personal opinions to flourish, often at the expense of civility. We must ask ourselves, how do we engage with such cases without crossing into judgment that disrespects those involved? The lesson here is to approach these narratives with restraint, recognizing that incomplete stories can mislead. Until the final pieces fall into place, maintaining respectful discourse honors the complexity of truth and the humanity of all parties, reminding us that justice demands patience over prejudice.